So when I first started out and started Bid Angels in early 2013, Michael was one of the first journalists that I met at the Wall Street Journal, and he was kind enough to feature me in his great book that was sort of the first book about the space, and grateful for all he's done for the space. So excited today. This is the third year that I'm doing this panel of blockchain leaders inside of the Digital Money Forum. And so I remember the first time we did it 2 years ago, the price of Bitcoin was a little over $200. And I remember Robin was saying, well, I can't have too much more than one panel because none of the Bitcoin people, and they didn't even say blockchain back then, none of the Bitcoin people have any money. They're either broke or in jail. And obviously, we're in a different world today with, we hit almost $20,000 for Bitcoin, and we passed briefly $800 billion in overall market cap, largely from these ICOs that Michael was talking about. So I'm going to go and introduce our panel here. And we have a killer panel. Going to start with panelists, come on up. Bill Shahara CEO of Bittrex, Vinny Lingham, CEO of Civic, Philip Piper, CEO of Swarm Fund, Jonathan Johnson of Medici Ventures, and is Brad?
I'm here. Ashish
Okay, great. Okay, great. From Ripple. So I'm going to start by asking everybody, what gives a token value, any token, and what gives your token value?
Well, let me start. Medici Ventures is a wholly owned subsidiary of Overstock.com, an online retailer. Today marks the 4th anniversary of Overstock accepting Bitcoin as payments for goods on our site. And today we accept over 50 different cryptocurrencies as payment on our site. And we have somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 of cryptocurrency revenue a week. So it's not a lot as a portion of our as a portion of our revenue, but it is real. And what gives a cryptocurrency value is that someone accepts it for something else. And we accept it when you buy sheets and toasters and sofas on Overstock.com. We've got several portfolio companies in Medici. The largest one is T0. It's issuing a token right now in an ICO, which will be a security token that entitles the holder to a portion of the revenue of T0. So that's what gives it a base value, and we think it's going to have much more value on top of that.
Ripple?
I'm Ashish Burla. Brad Garlinghouse couldn't be here, so he got sick last night, called me at midnight, said, why don't you get on a plane and join? So thanks for having me. I work at Ripple, and Ripple is focused on the, thank you. Ripple is focused on the cross-border payment space. When we were getting going with Ripple, we really, we wondered, why does it take so long? Why does it take 2 to 3 days to get money cross-border? It's faster to get on a plane with the suitcase, money, bring it down here to Vegas, spend it all. But we thought there's a better solution. And so we've been working on developing the XRP ledger, which is, houses our digital asset XRP, but then also building products on top of the XRP ledger for financial institutions, corporates, and banks to use to send money more efficiently. And really, I think a couple of things in terms of what gives digital assets value. One is trust. People have to trust that this token or digital asset is going to have value. And for us specifically, use cases. So what problem does it solve? And one problem that the XRP digital asset solves is providing liquidity to make money movement cross borders more efficient for financial institutions and corporations. And so that's really what's behind XRP as a digital asset.
Okay. Vinny.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, I'm Vinny Lingham. I'm co-founder and CEO of Civic. We did a token sale about 6 or 7 months ago in June, raised $33 million in tokens sold. And it was a pretty interesting experience for us because we, at the time, were the largest distribution of tokens to anyone. I think at the time we did it, I think the second largest was maybe a couple of hundred people, but we distributed tokens to 10,000 people in our sale. And that really has served us well. The use case for Civic is we're trying to, should I say for the Civic token, is we're trying to build a decentralized identity network. So the problem we have in the world today, and I think everyone's aware of it, is your identity information is very centralized in the US, 3 providers, and other parts of the world, somewhere between 2 or 1 and 10 providers per country. And so when these guys get hacked, all your personal information gets out there. So what do we do about it? How do we solve this problem? And Civic's building a network of technology which allows you to store your personal information on your own personal devices, your mobile phone, your laptop, etc. And essentially, verification hashes are placed on a blockchain, so your information is never on the blockchain. Just the proof that the private keys you have on your device, it can sign messages with that data. And we're building a marketplace around this data so that third-party providers can verify your identity without you having to submit your passport, your driver's license every time you open up an exchange account or a trading account, etc. So in order to make this work with a level of privacy that I expect and everyone at the company expects, and I think we're at a level now where the privacy aspect of Civic is so high, it actually takes us longer to build some of the security elements out. But we want to make sure that when someone trades information, so for example, if you open up an account at a bank and they're relying on another bank's information and verification, that this bank doesn't know who the other bank was, but they can securely verify that the information is correct and has already been verified. So we use a token for that that has some smart contracting features built into it, and we're rolling out the marketplace for that later this year.
My name is Philip Piper from Swarm Fund. Maybe let me start with the first question on sort of what is giving a token of value. I think generally you could say that a token has a utility and a desirability, and that gives it value. The utility itself is obviously fascinating. It's revolutionizing every single industry in the world, because you can actually derive, you could put it in context of incentivizing desired behavior. You can put it in context of actually real ownership, storing something, or actually owning data, like in Civic's case. And then the desirability is that it's applied to a very large and dynamic use case. And so at Swarm Fund, we're building the blockchain for private equity, which means we're preparing the world for the world of artificially driven or artificial intelligence driven investment decisions by building blocks that we give into the hands of fund managers, existing assets that they can use to then run their own funds. And then the benefit is that actually everyone in the world, institutional investors, family offices, but also the retail investors, can get access to them and do that in a regulatory compliant but also efficient way. So we're revolutionizing, so the desirability for us is actually that our token is the gas that makes the merry-go-round, meaning that if you want to place a capital, that basically you have to use the token to do that. If you're a fund, you have to use the token to actually operate and incentivize the operational infrastructure to provide the services to run the fund, et cetera. So it's separated from the securities aspect of the underlying asset base, which is a very critical component. So the desirability in our context is that we're revolutionizing a $2.5 trillion industry in 2017. And if we can add to actually sort of making a $200 billion fee ecosystem more efficient, that's a huge contribution we're making. And secondly, we're hoping actually that we can contribute to growing that industry, which over the last 12 years has doubled. Probably in the next 3 to 6 years, we can actually double that again, because we're making things more accessible. We're giving the smaller investors a more frictionless way to contribute and participate in value creation that they hadn't had access before.
Okay. And Bill, of course, at Bittrex, you see more tokens than just about anybody, but you don't have a token. And rare appearance by Bill. And I would normally say, and obviously as an exchange you don't have a token, but in the last couple of months we see Binance token, KuCoin token, Robinhood. All of a sudden all these exchanges are actually having tokens. So what gives a token value, and what do you think about these exchanges all of a sudden tokenizing themselves?
Okay, well, I mean, we see ourselves as incubators in the space. So as you said, we see lots of stuff. And the thing that gets me up in the morning is that every day I see some new application of the blockchain. And that's super exciting for us. In terms of what gives stuff value, I mean, obviously, I think the trust answer is a great one, right? You have to believe it's going to have value. But Use cases, right? The fact that you can go and use a token on some service out there, I think that's where you're going to see like true value in tokens moving forward. The stuff that gets me super excited in the token space, I love consumer-facing stuff. So when I see things like, being able to store data securely on the internet and you being able to control your own identity, that's super cool. Being able to do things like publish data, like blog posts in an immutable way so that it's censorship-free from government. I think that's super amazing. And we're sort of just scratching the surface as to like all the different use cases. As I said, we see probably 30 applications for really mature, well thought out ideas every week. And only a few of them get onto Bittrex because we're really looking for the cream of the crop. But I'd say every day I wake up and there's something that's super exciting that I love to see. In terms of blockchain or exchange-based tokens, I think Bittrex, we're probably not going to have one. We kind of see that as kind of a conflict of interest because we like to keep, we want to make sure that we're not, or our incentives are always in alignment with our users, right? So, having our own token, trading on our own exchange seems like a really bad thing. So we're probably not going to have one, but I'm sure like other exchanges who have their own tokens have probably figured out ways to kind of manage those conflicts. And that's something I think people would spend a lot of time researching and ensuring that's happening in the right way.
And so far, all those are non-US. So I'm going to have sort of the second question here be about, so I just finished the Coin Agenda Summit. We're, platinum sponsors here, Coin Agenda, which is an investor conference globally. We have 6 times a year. And, the hottest topic that we had yesterday, and I think it'll probably be hot in our Puerto Rico conference coming up in March and probably for the rest of the year until it's decided. And the gentleman speaking today from the CTFC, I'm looking forward to hearing what he says, is security token versus utility token. There are some people, and we just had the discussion as well, who think that absolutely, that the utility token is a myth. Everything will be regulated by the CTFC and, by the SEC, and the CTFC is just going to have to say, nope, I guess we don't have any role here. I really can't see Ethereum and Bitcoin being under the SEC. And so the question for all of you is, and at my conference, we had a couple of lawyers on there, and they're all like, yeah, security. And Halsey Minor stood up, who's here today, and gave a passionate speech about how he thought that, that we're driving business and entrepreneurs out of the United States by this. And I also had the top class action lawyer there, David Silver, who's sued pretty much everybody in sight. And I think that the role he plays in the system is when you don't get certainty from the regulators, lawsuits will give you a bit more certainty of whether it's going to cost you or not. So particularly interested in the folks on the end, but I'd like everybody to sort of give their opinion on what is a security token, what is a utility token, and obviously I think we all agree that pure security tokens, when the laws are more clear, when the exchanges like T0 and Polyswarm and some of the other ones are out in the next 18 to 24 months, and maybe NASDAQ has a token exchange, that there will be a huge influx of just restaurant chains that use a token to go public. So I'll just ask everybody about security versus utility.
Well, let me use an analogy that often helps people understand the difference between a security token and a utility token. Let's say I have an arcade that I run, and I want to raise money for the arcade. If I raise money to give up ownership in the arcade, that's like issuing a share. That's clearly a security. So if my token issuance is to help me raise money for the arcade, that's going to be a security token. If I have arcade games in the arcade and I'm selling a token that you can use to play those arcade games, that's clearly, in my mind, a utility token. If, however, I don't have any arcade games yet, but I'm going to build some arcade games, and I'm selling you a token that once I've built the arcade games, you can use to play the arcade games. That's what many people call a utility token, and I think at the end of the day, the Securities and Exchange Commission is going to say, that's a security token and regulate it. I think a lot of the tokens that have been issued over the last 12 months have called themselves utility tokens, but there's no utility yet built, and thus they're security tokens. And that's where T0 comes in. If you're a security token, you'll need to trade on an SEC-sanctioned exchange. That's what T0 is built.
Okay. And if the utility token is already built?
Then I think it's a utility, but I worry that the SEC, like most regulators, will expand its definition to regulate everything.
I'll chime in a little bit. Like I was there yesterday, and I was actually very much in favor of actually some of the passion that went into the argumentation of we have to fight for the utility token.
Absolutely.
And it can't be that sort of only everything gets thrown into the same kind of pot of defining something a security just because the rest of the ecosystem might look that way and smell that way. Second thing I'm going to say is that I think we're talking about a very household problem of the United States. The definition here actually is fairly clear with the Howey test. There is certain criteria that goes into actually how to define a security generally, not just with a tokenization. And if you really just dissect those elements very clearly, and every element has like 5 or 6 different other definitions that go into that, you will find out very clearly whether you are a security or a utility token. So it's important to have an active participation if you want to be a utility. It's important that you're not just doing this for leaning back and making money. It's important that you have the real chance to have utility in the product that is connected with the token, and it's not just made for some value extraction that very much smells like a security. So I think as much as it's been sort of a question in 2017, I think we're becoming much more smart and clear also from the legal side here in the country of how to see these things. The SEC is giving some very small guidance in that direction, but it doesn't mean that every token should be a utility, and I think very passionately also that we have to fight for making that possible, that utilities are utilities and are something outside of it.
And the Howey test itself comes from the 1940s, I believe it is, with a fruit company that tried to sort of follow the model of what wine companies do to sell wine futures, which are not regulated by the SEC because you can drink the wine. Even though you are going and giving money to Petrus or Rothschild, and they don't have the grapes yet. I mean, they're going to use your money to go and do this. You have no participation in that, and you're expecting to make money. You're going to hold on to these for a while, and they're going to go up in value. What makes it not a utility is you can drink the wine.
Yeah.
And so with Howey, what they did was, since you don't want to get rotten oranges a year later, they give you a dividend. And that's why Howey Fruit Company was a security and not a utility. But I always say if it's the wine futures test is something that you can look at, and we'll see whether the CTFC and the SEC agree.
The last point is, like, sometimes it's not bad to just say, I'm a security. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that, by the way, it doesn't mean that the tokenization has no value. Quite to the contrary, you can create security tokens that have the proper tradability restrictions that actually in the United States is very clear that you cannot sell a token that is a security token to someone that is not qualified as an investor. But at the same time, you can create these amazing other features on top of it. Governance is a big one. You can actually sort of have people in a more efficient way come to actually sort of appreciate the value in it, and respecting all the rules inside the United States as well as outside the United States still gives it an accessibility that is actually quite phenomenal.
So I'm gonna twist this a little bit for the last two because of your special circumstances. Vinny, how did you make the determination that yours was a utility token and not a security token? And for Ripple, I mean, you guys actually had some things with the SEC in prior years, and how do you feel that was resolved?
So I think, first of all, let's take a step back and understand that the social constructs we've created are that this is security, this is a utility, there's nothing else out there. There's no other type of token, and I think that's wrong. I think that there are probably some sort of intermediary type of token, maybe even 2 or 3 others on the side. But I think we have to take a little bit of a step back in terms of going back in time and understanding how this industry evolved to where it is today. This came out of largely a sort of crypto anarchist libertarian movement with Bitcoin and anonymous cryptocurrencies, etc. To the point right now where we're building these utility tokens, these security tokens, on infrastructure that was developed over the past nearly a decade. And so the philosophy around how the underlying protocols and technology has evolved is somewhat inconsistent with the way that the mainstream sort of commercial audiences and communities want to take things forward. And that's fine. But we need to accept that the governance structures are very different. So if you want a situation where you have effectively two masters and you issue a security token and you have shareholders of your company, you have a problem. The same happens with even a utility token and any other type of token definition you may come across. So what do I mean by that? When you're creating value as a company, organization, and entity, there's something I call a value trap. Where are you trapping value? Are you trapping it at the equity shareholder level? So in other words, your equity holders who may have invested in your company, or are you trapping value at the token holder level? And in some cases, some companies have got multiple tokens because I don't know why, but they think that ICO doesn't mean one, it means the first of many. And so we may get to a point where companies run out of money and have to issue a second token at that point. So now you have a situation like, the same with companies. You have debt, you have preferred debt, you have Series A, Series B, Series C shareholders, etc. Who benefits? Common stockholders lose in the end when things go badly, etc. And so we're creating a situation where we're bifurcating, trifurcating value creation within entities, organizations, and I don't think we've defined how the governance structures for that looks like. And so it's all really good and well for early investors and early people within the crypto community to be excited that Wall Street's coming, institutional money's coming, mainstream's coming. But these guys have no interest in the crypto anarchist revolutionary ideals of 10 years ago. Their expectations are that there's governance that looks something similar to what we have today with the current investment community. And when they realize that that isn't quite the case, I think we may have a bit of a disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got about 5 minutes left. Really quickly, how did Ripple sort of finally decide, after obviously conversations with the SEC, that you are a utility token? And then after that, Bill, just sort of, I know you have like huge compliance departments, and what's your process?
Well, I think for Ripple, our approach has been a little bit different. We work proactively with regulators, and so we have a massive team that's going out, educating regulators, helping them inform how digital assets could be a beneficial thing. Our products are built in such a way that financial institutions, banks, corporates can use our products to comply with local regulations. That's a little bit different than the approach taken by a lot in the community, but it's not about circumventing regulation. It's about making sure that incorrect regulation doesn't come. Digital assets aren't regulated in a way that doesn't allow for innovation. And I think that's just been our approach. It's a longer road, but it's paying off. And so we've been at that for since 2012. It's not always a fun thing working with regulators as a product guy, but it's something that's necessary, and I think that the community as a whole needs to do a little bit more in that area, so the opinions don't get self-inflicted and create and destruct some of the innovation that's being created in this space.
Bill?
Well, thinking about the token review process, it's evolved a lot over time, as we've matured as an industry. Today, we've got 3 things that we look at. The first has been the principle that's always stood, which is we always want innovation, right? So it's got to be innovative from a technology perspective, or it's got to be innovative from a business model and a blockchain perspective. The second thing that we look at is we look at the leadership team that's behind it. The primary investors, the advisors, the people who are actually developing the token, because most of you guys, if you use Bittrex, you know that wallets go down all the time, right? Things under stress, because this is so new and we're so on the cutting edge, everything breaks. And so we have to have confidence that as things are breaking, these guys are actually able to fix it, and sometimes fix this stuff on the fly. So, so having a great engineering team and a great leadership team behind the token matters significantly in the listing process. The third piece is just the overall compliance. As people are submitting applications to us, we ask them for all the literature that they've put out around their token. We want to understand how they actually raised money. What were the terms behind their ICO? We like to understand, and we ask them to provide memos to us from that they've written in conjunction with their lawyers to show us how they applied the Howey test to their token. And we bundle all that up, and then it goes back to a committee, which then reviews all that information and decides whether or not we should list a token on Bittrex. And we invest a significant amount of resources into that to ensure that really it's always the best and the best and brightest technology and projects that are on the exchange.
So it's 2:45, but I looked and it was 2:22 by every time getting said. Can I ask one last question? So the last lightning round question is, greatest accomplishment in 2017 for you in the industry, and what do you see for 2018, Bill?
Oh my God.
Reverse the order.
So 2017 was nuts, right? We started at the beginning of the year with 4 employees. We've got 43 employees right now and 40 contractors. So, the entire year was just insane. And, just the amount of growth that we had in user space. We went a 3-month span where we gained like 1 million users. The day that we shut down users, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, we shut off signups. We had 100,000 new people sign up in 8 hours. And we said, okay, let's give this a little bit of a rest. Let's go hire a whole bunch of staff and then reopen the exchange for new users. We wanted to make sure that it was completely, we wanted to make sure the experience was perfect for everyone who already had accounts on the exchange. So, for us, I think it was just the fact that the industry grew so quickly. I've talked to many people in the traditional exchange space. They've told me that in most new asset classes, you'll see 20% growth year over year for maybe 4 or 5 years before it flattens out. And we more than hit that in probably the first 3 months of this year.
Well, I think like not even 12 months, but the last 6 months, I think it's been phenomenal to see the breakthrough in the attention of the consumer paying attention to this, not just here in the United States, but globally. And we tend to forget sometimes, actually always talking about some mania and so forth, but it's actually a grassroots movement that is serving a lot of people, from remittance payments to other use cases that are normal, very normal people that have needs, that have a very different interest than just, making money. And with this whole growth, I think there comes a huge amount of responsibility, which just, foreshadows 2018, that we as an industry need to fulfill on it. We need to fulfill on the promise that we're given in different ICOs, that we are at what we present it to be. But the benefit also is that with that attention, the industry and the proper institutions are paying attention. And we had the SEC and the Federal Reserve come to our booth at one show and just have long-lasting questions with us in conversation, and they're paying attention in a very, very constructive way. So I think we as an industry have a huge benefit of doing other things that we could do that we could not do beginning of last year. But let's use that opportunity. Let's actually make this all a reality, and it's happening.
So Vinny, you've been known as the oracle of Bitcoin for your prognostications going all the way back to about 2012, 2013. Now that we've survived 4 or 5 forks, what's 2018 looking like for Bitcoin and for the whole crypto space?
Yeah, and I think I was one of those guys who's a bit of a balanced view of things for many years. And last year, I just didn't I got to the point where at the start of the year, I felt that Bitcoin's fees are getting too high, and if it continued to go up, the fees would get to a point where it is today, where it's $20, $30 a transaction. But it seems that the world doesn't care, right? So expensive payments on Bitcoin isn't a problem anymore. So I was bearish on Bitcoin, and I've been proven wrong on that in 2017. And I think it's more interesting to see that we've got multiple use cases for different coins. I think Ethereum's rise last year was really impressive. I mean, I think start of the year like maybe a single-digit buck or something, and now it's over $1,200. I just think that the sheer scale of this industry and the global attention in and of itself is something which makes it good in that we have big data to work with. We can start, it was really hard trading or buying tokens and coins, a year ago. Like there's no volume, there's no liquidity, and even if some of these things go bang and they collapse and they scams, that's fine. I think as a whole, we're going to get better and better at finding the good stuff and weeding out the bad stuff. And so when things go bad, there'll be a flight to quality. So the quality coins will surge, or at least they won't drop as much. And I think that's good. I think when you have all these choices of which coins to go and support, and based upon your personal philosophy or your risk tolerance, that's good. When you're in a world where you had maybe 10 or 20 choices, it wasn't interesting for everyone. So it's actually pretty fascinating to see the scale and scope that we're at today.
3 minutes left on my timetable, so lightning round, 2018.
Yes. Yeah, so
And
for-
obviously 2017 was a remarkable year for Ripple.
Yeah, so 2017, I think, was the year. I mean, I've been at this since 2013. 2017 was, 100 financial institutions signed, real production volume, solving real, customer problems across Ripple products. In October, we launched a product called XRapid that allows our institutions to use XRP liquidity to move money. Signing that first customer was also a big win in 2017. So it's like the light at the end of the tunnel, 2017. I think 2018 is going to be even more exciting. I mean, this space is not something that's in the future. It's here now, and that was like 2017. And I think scale is a lot into 2018 for Ripple, but I think the entire space as a whole.
Okay.
So I think
Last
for
word.
the industry, 2017 was the year of the ICO and all the coins that were out there, and that's been fantastic. I think for 2018, I would predict that we start seeing companies issue equity that's on the blockchain. So we've got standard stocks on the blockchain. And importantly, I think we'll see our first governments around the world issuing their currency digitally. And I think that's important because it will create more digital wallets, which will make it more mainstream to spend digital currency, whether it's fiat digital currency or cryptocurrency.
Let's give a big hand for this power panel.